come and bring us a message. No, we have not transported ourselves forward in time to December, but I don't want to steal his fire, so that's all I'm going to say. Luke has now entered his third year of seminary, so this is his final year, and he's back with us since he has finished his internship at MCC of Lehigh Valley. So he'll be back with us and doing multiple ministry items as he feels called to. I ask that you keep him in prayer not only for this morning, but for him for the entire year as he completes his studies and he does his clinical pastoral education, which can be very intense. And so we are truly blessed this morning to have Luke come and share with us.
Okay, thank you. So I feel like we have like a little Christmas scene today because we talked about the Christmas play coming up and we read about Bethlehem and we got like a little Christmas in September. So like Reverend Lori said, my name is Luke Shannon. If you don't know me already, I am a student at Lancaster Theological Seminary. Like Reverend Lori said, it's my third year. As far as where I am currently in my process, I'm in care with the denomination working towards ordination. And so this past year, I've been at MCC Lehigh Valley completing my clergy internship, which is a requirement for ordination. So that's where I've been. And so I've been in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and then I also went to Bethlehem in the Holy Lands. So I've visited 2 Bethlehems. So I was trying to think how I would kind of bring this together. I'm like, well, I guess I visited Bethlehem, didn't I? So that's what our theme today, and so that's what I would like to share with you. I also want to share with you the good news that as we all visit Bethlehem in our own lives, that God is with us. And so I hope that through this message today, you will be thinking about how each of us are visiting Bethlehem with our different things that we interact with every day. So if we go to the next slide, and the next slide, there we go. So this is my clergy internship, so I want to tell you about this first visiting of Bethlehem. So my first visiting of Bethlehem was in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and there was 3 aspects to my clergy internship. It was a year-long internship from August 2018 to July 2019. So the first aspect was the podcast program. So a podcast is a audio program, and it will be available soon online. So if you have like a mobile device and you want to download SoundCloud, that's an app. It's called SoundCloud, and we'll give more information about that once it is released. But I did some interviews with people from MCC LV, and they got to share their faith stories and go a little bit deeper. From that experience, I learned that it takes a lot of work to do producing. It didn't just come together, like it was a lot of work. So I learned a lot about that, but also how powerful people's stories are. And so it was a real joy to be able to hear people's stories and be a part of that. The second part of my internship was design, plan, perform live or mock practical aspects of church ministry. So that was where I would do like a mock wedding or a mock baptism. I did communion celebrant before, I did a sermon, and so all of that was just doing on-the-ground ministry. One thing that I really learned from that is that it wasn't me, it was God working through me, working through anyone who was leading worship. I make the little joke that if I was serving communion, it would just be like a little snack, like bread and juice. But with having God work through us, it becomes something more than that. It becomes divine. So that was a real joy to be able to do that and participate and become familiar with MCCLV ministry activities. So this is where I was kind of interacting with people in the church. I participated in worship, and I interviewed different people, wrote some response papers. And what I really learned there is, like, within the year, I got to know people, but then I had to go because of the end of my internship because I was visiting. And it really takes time to get to know people and get involved. So I'm looking forward to future ministry where I'll be able to dive in a little deeper. So this is my first visiting of Bethlehem and where I've been for the past year. And if you go to the next slide, this is what else I've done this year. And So one thing I've done is the cross-cultural trip to Palestine, Israel. That's my second visiting of Bethlehem. I went to the General Conference in Orlando. I completed a second year of my seminary classes. I had the comprehensive vocational review. That's a whole mouthful right there. And that was just a meeting that I had at the seminary. And I've been working as a nurse aide. Looking at this time of seminary, I've realized that my life has been very scattered. I have my home church here, and then I had my internship, and then I've had work, and I've had school, and I have another internship coming up in New York. And I realized that in the future, I hope to have a more integrated life where I'm able to be more in one place. So I'm looking forward to post-seminary time. And the next slide. Okay, so then this is my second visit to Bethlehem, which was in the Holy Lands. And so this was a 2-week trip, and it was a requirement of Lancaster Theological Seminary. And it was a cross-cultural trip. So we did do like the holy sites and saw all those things, but we were more interested in the people and the politics and the culture there. So we were very much people-centered in our trip. A lot of times that they had the saying that people go there and they see the dead rocks, they see just the rocks, but we went to go see the living rocks. We went to go see the real people there. So that's the focus that we had during the trip. All right, so this is just like a fun little map. So this is my trip that I did weekly to MCC LV. It was about an hour and a half. And then you see that red and orange area? That's true. There is construction up there. And I did not like that. And it was easier going there than coming back, because going there was early and people weren't up early. But when you're coming back, I don't know why, but they were on the roads in the afternoon on a Sunday. So that was fun. Okay, so then this is my trip to the other Bethlehem. So it was a little longer of a commute. I had to fly. We didn't take the boat. So yeah, that's kind of to get you a picture of where the second Bethlehem visit was. You want to go to the next slide? So during our trip, this was a lot of what we talked about. And it really came back to a lot of map stuff. If you look at 2016 and beyond, there's more land that was taken. And so there was a separation and land that's taken from Palestinian people. But there's many different tactics that are used to be able to do that. And what I learned from the many different conversations we had several different conversations with activists in Palestine, Israel, who are working for justice and for the people who are living in Palestine, which are millions of people who live within that green area. So the narrative that is heard over there is that the green area is where nobody lives. Nobody lives there, it's just land, and we're just taking land. But the truth and reality is that there's real people and real lives there. And so we learned about what's the real people and real lives that are living within that green area, which are people that are being erased and forgotten. And so the squeezing of the land is a tactic that is used because if the land was taken completely, then the state of Israel could no longer say Israel is a Jewish state, because there would be more people who are non-Jewish than Jewish. And so instead of just taking the land is squeezed. And so different ways that is done is through a border wall that has been created. And so the border wall does not follow what you see as the UN plan in 1947. It cuts into the land of Palestine and it isolates cities. So you have this wall that's just around the city. And it makes passing through the different areas of Palestine where people live, where their home is, difficult. And so if you look at the far right there, there's separation between the same area of Palestine. And so we learned that it's just difficult to get from one city to another because of these things that have been done. There's what's called settlements and outposts within Palestine. And this is where people have land and they live on this land to be able to claim the land for Israel. So it is not their land, but they'll live on it to be able to claim it for Israel. It's another tactic to be able to take more land and squeeze the land. ability to travel is difficult. Water access is restricted. So during 3 months of the summer, which in this area is very hot, and there's 3 months in the summer that water is not available for Palestinian people. And so what they do is they have water containers on top of their houses to be able to have water for when their water access is unavailable. However, within the settlements and the areas where there is really people, they'll have large pools and they'll have, just free access to water. However, that is not the story for those who are living within the occupied territory of Palestine. So it's the same region, and yet you see two very different lives. You see people who live in not great conditions, and we went to some refugee camps, and it was just really, it was hard to see. Not great ventilation because the buildings were so close together, so not good living situations for many people. And it was a heavy week, 2 weeks, to be able to hear about a people group who are being erased and forgotten, and that they don't really have allies around the world to be able to stand with them. And so there's been many people who have left the country, but there are still people there. And they describe Gaza as like an open-air human prison, just because the living situations were so bad. And so it was really heavy and really hard to hear all this. And so, thinking about going to the Holy Lands is not what I expected, but that's what this trip kind of told us about. And just like my podcast, I learned that it's so important to hear people's stories, because you can listen to the news and you can hear stuff either about the United States or about over there, and it doesn't show the whole picture. And when you talk to people, you can hear their real lived stories. And so it really encouraged me to seek out people and be able to listen to their lived reality. Also, it taught me that the cause for justice is all interconnected. So although I don't live over here, the things that I do for working for justice for all people here in the United States is all interconnected. So that was a really big learning point for me also. So, although it was a heavy trip and a hard trip, we did have a lot of sightseeing that we got to do. We got to see the holy sites. So this is a picture of my host family that I stayed with. And so that's the lady in the middle. And the person on the far right is my roommate that I had on the trip. And that's on their little balcony they have. So I got some food while I was there. So I went to a McDonald's right there. It was a different menu, and they had the big American burger, and it was big. But I took one for the team, and I ate it. And then the coffee is the coffee that we had there, and it was kind of more like espresso, and it had some like seasonings in it, so it really wasn't like our coffee. Okay, so then the one on the left is where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. So I got to visit there. And the one on the right is some decorations for Ramadan. So while we were there, they were celebrating Ramadan. And what we learned while we were there is within Palestine, there is a large percentage that are Muslim. But there are also Jews that live in Palestine. There's also Christians that live in Palestine. And then if you look on the Israeli side, you do also have Muslims, Jews, and Christians living in there. So this was in, I think, Jerusalem, where they were celebrating Ramadan. Okay, so on the left there is the remnants of a smoke bomb that we found. And these were shot into the refugee camp that we were visiting, where Palestinians who've been displaced from their homes. And if you look closely, it's like Jamestown, PA, I believe, is where it was created. So although we were, halfway across the world, we could see that there was an interconnection between the injustice that we were seeing and our homeland. So it made it a little more personal seeing that. On the right there is the border wall that I spoke of. And it's just a place where there's been a lot of graffiti and people being able to express their discontent about the situation of living within occupied territory. And then this was some of the more art that we saw on the border wall. So on the left there is one of the refugee camps that we visited, and if you look, there's actually like 2 buildings coming together there, and we even visited one that was even closer than that. And we kind of had to like walk sideways to be able to even walk through the buildings. So again, the ventilation just is not good within there, not good living situations. And these are people that lived within Palestine and were displaced. A lot of times their homes are bulldozed and their homes are taken. So this is maybe a home that's been in their family for centuries or a very long time, and it's just taken for one reason or another. And they're displaced without any right of returning to their home. Also, what they would do is if there was a village, they would bulldoze the whole village, and then they would plant pine trees to be able to erase that there even was people that were living there. So then on the right, there is some of the food that I had while I was there. And we had a lot of that tomato and cucumber salad. Lots of tomato and cucumber. I like tomatoes better than cucumbers. This was on the Sea of Galilee. So we got to take a boat ride there, and they played some Christian music while we did it, so it was very special. And that was kind of towards the end of our trip that we did that. And this was a view from one of the cities, Hebron, where we got to visit with some people who were doing some activist work there. And then this was on the Mount of Temptations in Jericho. And this was really cool. We had to take a ski lift to go up there, and they had like a world record for being the longest ski lift or something, so that's what we did. And we got to see this really nice view, and so I like high up views. Like everyone's like, do you like the beach or the mountains? I like the high up mountains to be able to see the views, because sand gets everywhere. And then this was the Jordan River. Again, that's my roommate that was there. And then this was the tomb of Jesus, and I just thought it was really cool how the light was coming in, and it was very busy there. Lots of people were lined up to be able to go into the tomb of Jesus. And that's just the view from my host family's balcony again. It was just so pretty. I was like, wow, you live here? Like, you get to see this like every day? So that was really cool to be able to be there and hear from someone that is living there. So what does this all mean? So, this is my visiting of Bethlehem in 2 different times, but, we all live through different things that are temporary, that are not forever. So my year-long internship was a temporary time, and it can be easy to be able to be like, oh, it's just temporary and I don't have to worry about it. But what is God speaking to you through these experiences? What is God trying to tell to you? As Reverend Lori said last week, are we listening to God? And when we listen to God, when we walk through these visits to Bethlehem, God can be telling us stuff. When we go to work, when we are doing ministry things here at the church, when we have life stresses and home issues or illness, what is God speaking to us through those situations? And so if you look at our scripture today, you see that Jesus visited Bethlehem too. He was born there, but then they had to escape to Egypt. The Magi came to visit Bethlehem. So there's lots of visiting of Bethlehem. And while we were in Bethlehem, it seemed to be kind of like our second home for a little while, because we spent many nights there. We spent time in other cities, but we spent a lot of nights there. So sometimes our visiting Bethlehem can feel like home in the new normal, but all of it is temporary and all of it is going to pass. And so, the message I have today is that I visited Bethlehem, and we all visit Bethlehem. And are we listening to God? And what is the message that God has for us when we are visiting Bethlehem? So I'm excited for this next year coming up. My last year of seminary, whoop whoop, and seeing where God is working here at MCC of the Spirit, and seeing where God is working in each of our lives. So I hope that we will all be open to God working this coming year and beyond, and be able to be listening to what God is saying. Will you join me in prayer? Dear Lord, thank you that you are with us on our visits to Bethlehem. Thank you that we are not alone in those visits. Help us to not forget your presence, but to lean into your presence, to realize the trials and the joys that we have, that they are temporary, and that you are with us to hear our crying, but to also to hear our joys. Thank you that we can come to you with all of our issues and our questions. And as we visit Bethlehem, please help us each not to become overwhelmed, but to know that your presence is with us. In the name of Christ.